So this is my fundraiser that I'm planning to start just today. I'll be racing this 911 RSR around Nürburgring for not continuously but 24 hours around Nürburgring, and I'm trying to raise donations to Oxford NHS Health Foundation Trust. First, I want to talk about why I decided to drive this Porsche car particularly. It was around last year that I come across a special edition of the Top Gear's magazines, one dedicated to Porsche, and it was around my birthday that I decided to get one. And then ever since, the cars has been growing on me, and this year around my 37th birthday I decided to get a 911 encyclopedia kind of book, and ever since the car is growing on me and I'm becoming more and more interested in. Obviously there are a number of different cars that one can drive on Gran Turismo, but this particular one, RSR, gives a very nice balance between power and drivability, and one of my favorites. And then the next question is the livery, which we see here is the NHS. I think this has been added to the open source libraries after the break of the coronavirus pandemic, and this particular one looks absolutely stunning in NHS blue, and everything feels very professional and it just feels right. So this is the car. The next thing is the driving gear that I want to show around. So in Gran Turismo, I think actually this view is fairly interesting. To the left, to the right of the car, in the previous screen, there was a boardroom which I can admire. I think it's one of FIA's boardrooms, and I can definitely imagine myself talking about research in a meeting, although the car would be highly distracting. So this is the costume that I'm going to use for this race, and again I suspect that this was added after the break of the coronavirus pandemic. And as far as I could remember, earlier this year in a Top Gear episode, the guys at Top Gear compared the driving skills of different key workers. I think it was the ambulance service, and then the fire brigade, and then the police. And as far as I could remember, in that episode the ambulance service didn't do that well. So today I'm planning to score one more for the NHS. Next up would be the race conditions that I want to walk you through just before starting everything. So the way one can adjust these settings is through a custom race. And then I will be driving the Nürburgring circuit, which is the 24-hour circuit, which combines both the Grand Prix and the Nordschleife. So it's the longest one, around 25 kilometers, and it's regarded as a highly challenging circuit to drive. So the second question is how to implement a 24-hour race. Obviously, for health and safety reasons, I wouldn't be able to drive this in one go, although if I had 3 flatmates and a proper simulator, it should well possibly be with a steering wheel that each driver could drive around 3 to 4 hours, and changing 3 drivers just like in a professional racing team. So instead what I'm planning to do is, there are 2 options actually. So one, we can select a time of the day and then decide to drive 24 hours using that time frame. The other option could be that starting from, for example here, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, driving for 2 hours until we connect to 5 p.m, driving for another 2.5 hours, connect to 6:30, and then so on and so forth until we reach the night segment. And then during that segment we drive another 9.5 hours until we reach the morning segment, and then continue 24 hours until we finish again at 3 p.m. So this is the strategy that I'm planning to use. So I will start today here at 3 p.m, and then the first segment will be for 2 hours. The car will be an automatic. So here again we see the car in beautiful NHS blue, and I think this has been done to a very professional quality. I quite like this that I found from the open source libraries. So what are we going to do here is just change this to endurance, and then the race will be 2 hours. I'll be starting at the bottom of the grid, and then it will be a rolling start where the distance between cars will be 25 meters as it is in professional racing. The boost function will be strong, which means that the opponents will fight back as strongly as possible, and then the slipstream will be real, and then we will implement heavy mechanical damage, which basically means that whenever there's a damage to the car, it will affect the physics of the car to a considerable degree. And then the tire wear 3 times as normal, and then fuel depletion to the max. So the differences between these tire wear and fuel depletion will allow different strategies to emerge in the race, and then it will be more challenging overall. And then the next issue is getting the grip on the edge of the track, sorry. And then we will simulate a real response. The opponents will be in Group 3 GT3 category, and then the opponent's ability will be professional. And then the shortcut penalties will be strong, because I don't want people to think that I would be cutting corners, so whenever there's a penalty I will slow down. And then we don't need a further wall collision penalty because we already have the mechanical damage here, so that would be damaging enough. And then the rest of the settings are default, so the flag rules are on, which means that whenever I'm lapping another car there will be blue flags, and then the car which I'm supposed to lap will give me way. So this is the setting that we start with, and then the amount of credits this should generate is 295,000. In Gran Turismo, as far as I'm concerned, the conversion rate is almost 1-to-1. In a parallel universe, there would be someone wealthy enough to make this kind of donation to our cause, which would go to Oxford NHS Health Foundation Trust. And this is how much credits I would be able to earn if I finish 3rd, 4th, or 5th, so on and so forth. So below in the banner we can see that the M6 cars from BMW will be leading the pack, followed by the Toyota, and then Lamborghini Huracan, Ferrari, Audi R8, Citroen, it's a concept car, and then Renault, Ford GT, Honda NSX, it's a GTI concept, and then a concept car from Peugeot, and then Toyota Supra, Volkswagen Beetle, and then we are at the very bottom of this. Grid. So now I want to briefly walk people through the car settings. So here what I'm doing is the power ratio is turned down completely to give me the highest disadvantage as possible, whereas the weight reduction is 100%, which means that the car is in stock weight around 1200 kilos. The reason why I'm not turning this up is if the car is heavier, then it would cause a massive understeer, and what this means is that even if I try to change the direction with the steering wheel, the high mass absorbed, the kinetic energy absorbed in the mass wouldn't allow me to do that, so the car would be more likely to struggle turning the corners, which I really don't want to have. So I want to have a challenging race, but I don't want to end up having a car which would be impossible to drive. And the traction control settings is one. These are things that I can tweak on the race. And then I'll be starting with Racing Hard Compound, which would have more laps in them, but obviously the grip would be less than a super soft tires. And the rest of the settings I tried to optimize this week while I was trying to practice for this event. So approaching 3, I will click the race button so that we start with the hour and drive for approximately 40 minutes. I'm personally fairly good driving in this track, so I was able to simulate some lap times from real cars, production cars, for example, Volkswagen Golf Club Sport, and then Lamborghini Aventador Super Veloce, and then Pagani Zonda R. And recently I was able to simulate the lap time of Laurens van Hoor driving the 911 RSR in Manthey racing livery. So in another half a second I will initiate the race. The difficulty with comparing the current event with those that I achieved in the past is they were using the bumper view, which gives you a wider field of view while racing, whereas today's one will be inside the car, and I will illustrate the difference between those two views and how difficult it would be to drive. So another 10 seconds and I will initiate. If you have any questions, I think for those people who have a channel on PlayStation, the PlayStation would read these things back to me, whereas for those others who don't have it, if they tweet questions or comments to Twitter, I would be responding to them. So this is the cockpit view, whereas the bumper view would be like this. Obviously much easier to drive the car. So we are 20th at the bottom of the grid. This is actually one of my favorite corners because, as you can see, it's impossible to see the apex here, that one needs to develop an intuitive way of driving. The race car drivers usually call this driving in the flow state, whereas in neuroscience I think the corresponding label would be a motor memory, that after so much practice one gets the hang of doing stuff, and in this case driver and the machine almost becomes one, as if the car is an extension of the body, and then you're able to guide things to a better precision. One of the most important things in endurance racing is to look after the car, so I really don't want to get involved with an accident, especially in a track like this where the track length is around 25 kilometers. If you get involved in an accident somewhere in the early sections of the track, which means that you need to drive another 20 kilometers with a damaged car, and obviously that would hurt the times quite a lot. Here we enter the Nordschleife segment. In front of me is an Aston Martin Vantage. The challenge in the Nürburgring is not only driving the car properly, but also maintaining a good braking distance with the cars behind you, because not all accidents are one's own fault, and no, already P16. 3 seconds to the car in front of me. So in the Nürburgring, I think the most sensible strategy is to drive conservatively until one can start building pressure on the car in front of you, and then in between try to push as much as possible. So we started with P20, but we are already P16, and we are trying to catch the cars in front of us. The important thing is to just think about the bigger picture, so smashing lap times is never the primary issue in endurance racing, so we should think of this as a long event and try to preserve the car and deal with opponents one by one. In front of me is a Toyota Supra, I think. It's one of the newer versions, which was developed jointly by Toyota and BMW, because nowadays car development costs are too much for even a company like Toyota to handle on its own. This part of the track is very challenging because it's extremely narrow and doesn't allow too much overtaking opportunities. The current car that I'm driving is 13% less on power than everything else, because I really want this to pose a serious enough challenge for me. So which means that in straight line it's difficult to keep up with the rest of the cars, which I'm trying to compensate otherwise. This would be the right timing to get, yes, nice and clean. I've been training for this event in the past week, and to tell you the truth, the likelihood that I would get involved in an accident is around 10%. So I'm trying to behave, not to push too hard, because it's very easy to get it wrong. These are the more difficult segments of the track. I really need to slow myself down, because I know that this is very prone to error on this part of the track. In front of me is a Volkswagen Beetle GT3. Jeremy Clarkson would argue that essentially Beetles and 911s are the same car, which is partly true for the earlier history of Porsche, where they had a lot of components from Volkswagen, but in the current case I think maybe this might as well be true, because unlike the real Beetle, which would be fairly underpowered relative to a 911, the current cars, both being in GT3 class, would have comparable power. This might be, not this, but the following turn, I think I might have a good window of opportunity. Lower left corner, one can see that I had a subtle damage to my front bumper, which I will ignore. Here we go. So this is our NHS car. P14. And then the Beetle is taking over, because usually the front bumper damage costs around 10 to 15 kilometers per hour for the maximum speed of the car. Seconds off the leader. I'll try to get this better in the second lap. Quite heavy braking. This GP segment of the race is much better to overtake cars, obviously, than the Nordschleife. I think on the inside I have a chance. Yes. On the limit and out. As far as I'm concerned, I think we can tolerate bumper damages, but damages to the suspension would really send us to the box. The next up is the Volkswagen. Yeah, nice and clean. That's exactly what I didn't want. Lost 3 places already without any damage, which is okay. And we are back to behind Supra. And in these kind of occasions, the greatest challenge is getting away. With the incident, because if you bump into another car, that would mean that more of the car components would be damaged, and then one needs to go back to the pit. Literally on the limit. Unfortunately, 11 seconds to the next car, 12 seconds. So 10 seconds, we are closing the distance to the car in front of us. I want to thank you for all the people who donated to this cause, but I'm trying to raise funds for Oxford NHS Health, obviously, which are at the forefront of the vaccine studies against coronavirus. Our lap times are improving. Obviously the incident earlier in the first turn caused a lot of lost time, but over the course of 24-hour race there would be a lot of opportunity to recover those times, so one needs to look at the bigger picture and forget about the mistakes as quickly as possible. I'm turning towards carousel on the limit. As you can see, unlike real life, the steering angle really obstructs a lot of the view, and sometimes people need to drive into the blind spots because it's impossible to see what's up ahead. The distance has gone down to 6 seconds. Initially it was 11. So we're doing fairly well. Yes, now I can see the opponent just in front of me. is the Volkswagen GTI concept car, which are called Vision Gran Turismo cars, which are not being mass produced, but just to showcase the future design language of certain brands which are affiliated with Gran Turismo. The nearest opportunity, I will push for an overtake on the inside, and nice and clean. And now I can show you the car, the reverse view. Shouldn't be doing this actually. What I can see, there's damage to our suspension, which pulls the car to the side. So I'm planning to go in and fix the car. As we can see that we cannot gain too much maximum speed on the huge straight because of the imbalance caused by the suspension damage. So I will box in and get that fixed, and hopefully we can. So the pit crew also has similar gear, like the latex blue gloves. Coming back on the P14. Tail happy. Another 14 seconds to the next opponent. But at least now we have the car completely fixed. Then we can again push for fastest lap times and get that down as quickly as possible. So already 10 seconds. The limit. I can see the car in front of me now, down to 7 seconds. So this was the corner that I lost it on the previous lap, or the lap before. I usually don't get involved in any kind of accident in that corner, but it is what it is. Back to the Nordschleife part of Nürburgring. Let's try to catch that car now. I think this looks like the Gran Turismo concept car from Peugeot. one way of dealing with opponents is to put as much pressure as possible and then force them to an error, but obviously we might as well get involved, so it's always important to stay calm as much as possible. Chance maybe? Try a bit of contact. Yes. On the brake. And then try to clear a healthy distance, because under heavy braking sometimes it's possible that the cars behind you can also go into your rear bumper, and then it would damage the aero and it would cause downforce issues, making the car more difficult to drive. And 11 seconds to the next car, P13. The steering wheel is just obstructing too much of the field of view. Now I can see the car 4 seconds ahead of me. Actually, I can see 2 of them, even the third one. Off we go. 9:31 is the fastest lap so far. It might as well be you might smash that in the current lap. Two cars are already boxing in. There's a yellow flag for a brief second. Actually, in the last lap we did 9:23, which would have been the fastest lap, but they don't register the laps immediately after the pit stop, so overall we are around 8 seconds faster than the current fastest lap holder. And P11, thanks to two other cars boxing in, and I can see a huge traffic in front of me. If I could overtake one of these just before entering the Nordschleife section, that would be great. I don't think it will happen, but let's see. Just to remind you, I'm playing with heavy mechanical damage, which means that the smallest incident will cause damage to the car, and especially if the suspension gets damaged, it causes a lot of problems, considering the track itself is around 25 kilometers, that one needs to drive with that damage until reaching back to the pit stop. We started P20 and 4 laps into the race we are now P11 with 37 seconds behind the leader. In front of me is the Honda NSX. This could be the opportunity, yes. P10. Just to remind you guys who are watching, the car is 13% down on power, just to make this race as challenging as it can be, while still maintaining a drivable car. Registered a penalty for me for an unknown reason, but let's comply. I have no idea why that penalty was. Overall, the NSX in front of me feels awfully slow. I don't know whether that car also has some sort of damage or not, but somehow there's something which doesn't feel right. Some of you guys might be wondering about the yellow chick on the top right corner, so that's a reference to a Japanese sweet called Hyoko, made from azuki beans, which was my favorite when I was a postdoctoral researcher working in Japan. That was close. I want to overtake this NSX in a way which won't cause any trouble. This is really the most difficult part of the track. I think now I would have a opening. Yes. Nice and smooth. Back to P10 and 11 seconds to go until the next opponent. So the blue gloves that you can see on the steering wheel is coming from a paramedic costume that I found from the open source library, and they are meant to resemble the blue latex gloves that our paramedics wear. Approaching carousel again. One more lap. Nine seconds to the next car. Maybe I should be talking about charitable behavior and how people step in to help not only the NHS but also other people who are in need during these times. This was something that I have studied during my PhD. That was close. And we used charitable donation framework to probe a certain area of the brain to understand how patients who have been previously depressed process that kind of social information. And there's a part of the brain which is called subgenual cingulate cortex, which is underneath the genia of the corpus callosum, which is the bundle of white matter tracks which connect both hemispheres. And that area is known to be an important area for depression. Earlier studies suggested that area to be hyperactive in patients with chronic depression, and then there had been some evidence to suggest that a deep brain stimulation of that area attenuates symptoms of depression in people who are severely treatment resistant. And interestingly, that area has a lot of selective activation when people process social information, such as thinking about the aims and objectives of charities. In this lab I should be boxing in, and using that paradigm we show that patients who have fully remitted from depression, so no symptom at the time of brain scan, still maintained a selective hyperactivation in that area when they choose to donate to charities. this is the lap that I should be boxing in. And I will be changing medium compound tires. And fully refueling, and as soon as I'm out I'll be stopping this initial broadcast and continue where I left off tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. See you tomorrow.